So the full frame, lower angles, more contrast, going down the Gotham sort of feel of it with the colours and things. And it turned out beautiful.
Hello and welcome to Canon in Motion, our week of exclusive promotions on Canon products, which is pretty much one of our largest ever value add offers. This week at ProAV, each Canon product you buy will give you a value which you can spend towards anything on our tailored list of accessories, with all kinds of products on there. There's simple things like media and batteries, but there's also Flowtech tripods, on-camera monitors, lenses. The choice is yours. And today we're joined by Ross Clarkson, a cinematographer who has used the C500 Mark II for his last few feature films. Now unfortunately, as these films aren't actually released yet, we can't show any footage here, so this video is just going to be our conversation. But I'll put a link to the production company's website down below, so you can head over there and flick through the films while we chat. So Ross, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me today. How are you?
I'm good, Carl. How are you?
I am very, very good. So let's just start by introducing the people watching this at home to you, the work you do. What sort of projects do you end up working on?
I mostly do feature films.
Lucky you.
And more recently, romantic comedies and Christmas comedies.
So, and you've been using Canon for those feature films, the recent ones, right?
I've used them for the last 3. We're in the Caribbean with, high temperatures, wind and a bit of sand, and the gear held up extremely well. Not one problem.
That's the C500 Mark II, is it?
Yes, yeah.
And what have you been using before you were using Canon on those? What sort of things do you normally shoot these on? Is it ARRI or RED? Or?
Depends. In Asia, they're very much RED. Right. On some stuff in Thailand, they're Alexas. When I came over here with the company, we started on Alexa Minis. And I bought a C200 at that time because they said, okay, we only want to shoot on one camera. And it's like, yeah, okay, good luck on that. So the C200 was basically just for inserts and B-roll because, if I wanted to do a sunrise or something, the whole crew's not going to turn up.
Something to be a bit more mobile.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just run my own race. And they ended up using it full time, which, was a little bit unfortunate for the operator. Because it's only autofocus, they wouldn't give them a focus puller or anything.
Wow.
So, and at the end of the day, when they did all their color grading, it matched perfectly. You can't tell the difference.
Excellent. And so you moved from the C200 to the C500. What was the thinking behind that and the reasoning? What was the journey like for that?
The company had to deliver full 4K. So they had to stop using the Mini, and just the price range of the Alexa LF was too much. And the C500 hadn't been out too long then, I believe. And I was trying to promote it to them, saying, check it out, have a look at it. And at first of all, the post guys were saying, okay, the file sizes are quite large. And it's like, well, yes, it's 6K.
Well, the files out of the ARRIs aren't small, if you're shooting on decent quality ProRes and all the rest of it.
Oh, if you go on LF, the files are huge as well. Yep. They were comparing it to the Mini, and it's like, stop doing that because you can't use the Mini anymore.
Sure, that's 2K.
And the lenses, we had the Samiris, they were extremely nice. They just weren't as plasticky, as sharp as like the Ultra Primes. And they fit really nicely, all full frame, a nice look. Because the first product was something where they wanted it to look a bit more Gothamish. So the full frame, lower angles, more contrast, going down the Gotham sort of feel of it with the colours and things. And it turned out beautiful.
Let's talk a little bit about these projects then. So you said you mentioned it on 3 feature-length narrative projects.
Yes. Yeah.
And what sort of timescale were you building those? I get the impression they're quite sort of quick turnaround features. Would that be fair?
They're short schedules.
How long were you given to shoot then?
One of them was 18 days, around between 18 and 20 or 24 days schedules. But the cameras are fast to move the camera department never slows us down, or as much as the producer doesn't believe me, nor does the lighting. Hey, put some actors in front of the camera so we got something to shoot, and we'll keep moving on. Okay.
So were there any challenges on working with Canon for projects like this rather than the sort of the ARRIs and the res that you're perhaps used to? Was there any obstacles to overcome for the crew?
I would say not. It's an easy system to work with. I mean, it's extremely close to Alexa. It's extremely nice skin tones, very flattering for actors, as in, you don't need to count all the pores in everybody's skin all the time. It's more forgiving with makeup, so you don't see the makeup strokes on people's faces. I've on some of them, I was just using like 1/8 Black Pro Mist.
Swapping that in and out depending on the character you were filming, or just stuck it in the entire time?
I stuck it in the whole time. And the lenses, they held up nice, even shooting the sun with a filter in it. Very nice.
I've heard lovely things about the Sumiro lenses. I mean, I've always enjoyed using them myself, but all the customers that we've spoken to that have used them on big projects have been very happy with them. I think they've got a really nice character to them, those lenses.
They're very, very cookish, without the price tag. And they're light, they're small. So you can go very compact with the camera if you just running a Canon battery in the back of it. Because how we had it set up, it's exactly like an Alexa. It's got the cage, it's got all the monitors, it's got the transmitters. To look at it from a distance, you wouldn't know it's a Canon.
Let's talk about that setup in a little bit more detail then, if possible. What sort of accessories did you have attached to it? Do you remember the details?
Remote focus, V-lock batteries, the focus thingy sitting on the top of him.
Yep.
Teradex.
What sort of brand of monitors were you using?
I just use the Canon ones personally. I love the eyepiece. The 70 is really nice.
Yes, the proper one.
I would put that over the Alexa eyepiece and totally over a red eyepiece. And one thing that I've found is the latency is virtually non-existent. Where on red, because I used to do a lot of action films, and on red, there's at least 12 frames latency. And when someone's flying through the air, that's a big distance, or a big latency to miss the action. Because someone falls in maybe less than 12 frames.
It's a really nice viewfinder, that one. And were you using a separate kind of monitor mount and rigging there for that eyepiece for the viewfinder, or were you using the Canon?
No, I think all the accessories were ARRI.
Yeah, the ARRI ones are very common.
Yeah, so just pop it out, pull it out. And also I've got a longer cable for when I use the C200 on a Ronin. And so I can easily pop the monitor right down the back of the camera. So if the camera's up higher, it's just tilting it down, and it's very easy to operate. And I still carry the C200 all the time. So for any, quick little Ronin shots or something, feet running around somewhere. And I got a R5 as well for time lapses and 120 frames and just ease of shooting B-roll. So
you do use all those three on big projects like that, do you?
Yes. Well, on any project, because I just consider, you can't pull a whole crew out to get a sunrise. The production's never going to pay for it.
Before the sort of C200, what was your history with Canon like? I mean, what was your journey to this point?
From day one?
Well, it depends how long the story is.
pretty long. The first still camera I got was Canon, because I worked at a TV station and just doing photography. And initially I went for Canon because it focused the same way as the cinema lenses, where Nikon goes the other way. And just when you're shooting news, you're doing all your own focus. You don't want to go the wrong way.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, that was it from the beginning. and I just always liked Canon colors. There was a big gap where when digital first came out, I didn't touch anything because it's like, okay, let it go, let it go, let it go. And then 7D or something, when they started to get 5D Mark II, when that started to actually do video and stuff. So it's like, okay, this is something to start looking into, because they're using those cameras on Mad Max. You can use them as crash cameras, preferably not, but you can fit a small camera anywhere. So you're getting freedom, because on a BL, an old film camera, they're friggin' huge. You can't stick that on the bonnet of next to the windscreen of a car, where the C200 and a sandbag you can. So I always look at keep a camera system as small as possible, because that's an extra benefit of using those cameras instead of, decking it out and making it huge where it's just a tank again.
I mean, it's something we see across the entire industry, from consumer all the way up to features, that a smaller camera, as long as the quality stays, the smaller camera is always welcomed. I mean, you only have to look at what's happened with Ari's lineup. I mean, how popular has the Mini's been over the full-size Alexas? I mean, that shows everything in terms of shrinking things down, doesn't it?
People also to avoid permits, to avoid permits a lot. Yep. Especially, I live in Hong Kong, and the 1DX was shooting, I made my own little film with it, and shooting a scene on a train station, and no one was paying any attention to me whatsoever. It's like, well, damn, I could put down $1 here. All they want to do is check people's tickets for the first class carriage. And with the C200, if you're only using the hand grip and the eyepiece at the back, it looks very much like a still camera. So if I'm doing guerrilla type of stuff, I don't use the monitor at all. The little eyepiece at the back is great.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can do that same with the C500 Mark II. It's where you can't do that with an Alexa. That's where also being able to switch up to autofocus is...
what are your thoughts on autofocus for that sort of narrative work? Because that's an area that we see discussed a huge amount from customers with experience and without experience in that sort of work.
You will always need a focus puller, but the tools that are coming up, and I believe that can continue to come up, will make their life easier, because, especially full frame and you're shooting wide open and, your depth of field is like that. And yet, okay, now we want them running to the camera. It's like, what? Evidently you just don't like focus.
Just to wrap up then, have you got any advice for any customers of ours that might be sitting at home thinking that they maybe never have considered Canon for this sort of narrative work, and anyone looking to get involved with Canon and explore them as a brand for that sort of work? Do you have any general advice for people in that situation?
It's worth exploring, because even for the next job I'm looking at, I have to see if the cameras are technically possible to do it. But the producer said, cinematographers prefer the look of Ari. And it's like, yes, I get that, true. But Canon, you'd be hard pushed to put them next to each other and spot the difference.
I've heard a lot of customers come back sort of, especially with the C500 and the new C300 Mark III, sort of describing that raw footage as being like a slightly more saturated Ari. That's a phrase I've heard quite a lot from different people. It's a bit like an Ari, but with slightly more saturation to it.
Everyone's after lower budget productions and stuff, and you must be fast on set. Apart from, cameras do not slow you down. But as for lower budgets, the LF does not come cheap. And I think it's totally worth looking at on the lower budget. If you got a huge budget, take whatever you want. But even if I was on a low budget, I would imagine people would frown at me if I said, hey, let's shoot this on, I'm doing Bond, let's shoot it on Canons. They'd go, what? But guaranteed, if you did one on it, everyone would suddenly go, oh wow. So, all it needs to do is start getting, movies in theatres and start being more popular, because people are all against red in the beginning for shooting cinema and stuff.
Right, well, that's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl. It's been a pleasure.